Hello, advanced algebra students. Welcome back to another video lesson on quadratic formula, where we are now going to be using a calculator, or even Desmos for that matter, to help us find the solutions to more contextualized problems with objects falling or being thrown, objects in motion. And so we are going to use Desmos, and there's just a few things that I would make sure to highlight as you understand it. First and foremost, you always need to make sure that you write out the formula that you're using. Even if you get to use the calculator, we need to see what are you putting into that formula, what did you substitute. All right, we will need to see that on the test. Okay, again, if you don't show work part, you don't get any credit, even if you have the right answers, especially in this virtual world. Even on this section, and I'll show you what I mean when we get to an example, I want to see what are you putting into the formula and your work, even though you're using a calculator. I would suggest that you're going to probably end up going to the Desmos scientific calculator, which is really, really helpful, much more helpful than some of the graphing ones that we have been using. You're going to plug in the addition solution first, right? And then once you get that full answer, I'm going to show you how you can just go and delete the plus sign and replace it with a subtraction sign, and it'll replace all of the work for you. Make sure that you put all of the stuff, b squared minus 4ac, underneath the square root sign. You can even put parentheses around anything that you're squaring. So we'll take a look at what this looks like in an example and make sure you follow along and write some of these steps down. So here's example 1. I'm on page 11, number 4 from your packet. Gravel is falling 4 feet from one conveyor belt to another. Because of the way the conveyor belt is constructed, the gravel is given a slight downward velocity. It's going down at negative 1.4 feet per second. How long does it take each piece of gravel to fall from the upper belt to the lower belt? Basically, we're solving this using the quadratic formula. Okay, so we've got this upper belt right here that gravel's falling down. And what it's doing is it's falling on another conveyor belt here. This is our height 0, right? So h is 0. We want to know when it reaches that second conveyor belt at 0. So identifying A, B, C again. Now, this is the part that we want to see on the test. Opposite of B is 1.4 plus minus the square root of b squared. So 1.4 squared minus 4 times the a value, which is negative 16, times the c value, which is 4, all over 2 times a, 2 times negative 16. So what I just wrote right here in red, we needed to see that this is what you're plugging into Desmos. I need to see this written on a test so that I can give you full credit. Make sure you write that part down as part of showing your work, even though we're going to go to Desmos here in just a second and type all of this in. So let's go ahead and hop over to Desmos. And again, I've gone to desmos.com/scientific, where I can use their scientific calculator. And we're just going to start with that plus part. So, if you didn't write this down, I would write this down somewhere to make sure you have that. Again, the a value was negative 16, that b value was negative 1.4, and the c value was 4. And I plugged it into the quadratic formula. So we're going to type this all over here, but we're only going to use the plus part. All right, so we've got 1.4 plus. Then you want to go grab the square root symbol. And the first piece we're going to put inside of parentheses is 1.4, because that's the only number we're squaring. So 1.4, shift with the number 6, raises it to a power of 2. Then I hit the right arrow, plus or minus 4 times the a value, which was negative 16, times the c value, which was 4. All right, so there's the top part, and I'm just going to hit enter. Right, that's the top part of this. Now I need to make sure I divide that answer by these two. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the answer button. So it takes the previous one. I'm going to hit the question mark / divide button. And then I'm going to go to parenthesis -16 and close my parenthesis. And you can see there's my answer, right? So we get a -0.55. So we get 0.55 negative, meaning it could take -5.5 seconds, right? Seconds. So how long does it take to get down there? Negative seconds? No, we can't have a negative answer. So that's not the right one. Now, all we've got to do is instead of calculating the plus, I'm going to delete that and hit minus. And it changes both of the answers here. It changed that line to -14.66, and then it changed our overall answer to 0.46, or 0.46 seconds. So it would take that gravel almost half a second to go from one conveyor belt to the next, all because we use decimals to solve that, right? There's a lot of information in here that we can't do in our heads, and that's perfectly fine, all right? But the main idea is that we can see all of this. We want to see both of these parts inside of your answers when we are looking at these on a test. Let's just try another example, make sure that we understand it. All right. A rock is thrown from the top of a tall building. The distance in feet between the rock and the ground, x seconds after it's thrown, is given by that function, quadratic function. How long after the rock is thrown is it at 340 feet from the ground? How long until it's at 340? Well, notice it doesn't want us to know when it's at the ground. It wants to know when its height, when it reaches 340. So we're going to set everything equal to 340 because it wants us to know how long will it take the rock to get to that height, to get to that 340. So it's a little bit different. You got to make sure you read the context of the problem, very carefully. Now, one of the things we talked about in using quadratic formula and identifying the A, the B, and the C is that the equation needs to equal 0. So I've got to move this to the other side, right? And I'm going to subtract it from that 382, meaning 0 equals -16x squared minus 4x plus 42. Or A is -16, B is -4, and C is 42. But what we really need to see on your work, when you submit your work, is how are you plugging that into the quadratic formula? Or the opposite of B, which is 4, plus or minus the square root of B squared, -4 squared, minus 4 times A, which is -16, times the C value, which is 42, all over 2A, or 2 times -16. So that's what we're expecting to be able to see on the actual test when you do that. And now we're going to go back over to decimals and calculate the value of that. All right, I'm going to clear everything, and let's retype that. All right, 4 plus the square root of -4 squared, right? -4 is going to go in parentheses, minus 4 times -16 times 42 equals 56. So we take that previous answer of 56, we divide it by the bottom, which is 2 times -16, and we get -1.75 seconds. So one answer we got was -1.75 seconds. Again, it can't go negative time. We don't have a time machine to go backwards, so that's not a viable solution. So now instead of doing the add, let's go back and change the addition to a subtraction and watch how everything changes. negative 48 up here, and 1.5 seconds. 1.5 seconds. In other words, it's going to take this rock that's being thrown 1.5 seconds to reach 340 feet. Okay. Again, the main goal is to make sure you can punch these into Desmos accurately, that you understand what the answers are giving you and how to look at them, but also make sure you know how to write out what you're plugging in, because if you don't have any of this, I can't give you any credit on the test. If you have any questions, please make sure that you reach out. Otherwise, until next time, everyone, stay safe.